Norm is such a vibe because he's like, how do you punish somebody who has equally hated every job he's ever had? And man, that is just that's such a good vibe to have. Like, lacks enthusiasm in every single job. But then you have poor Chet just crying his eyes out over losing his gatekeeper job. Hello, everybody, and welcome back. This is episode 2 of our Fallout Season 1 review. If you missed the first episode, it's not on this channel. You're at the wrong place. You actually have to go to Amber's channel, and that link will be in the description below. So if you're here and this is the first one you're watching, don't watch this one. Go back and watch the other one, then come back to this one, and then you can enjoy it. So just pause it and unpause when you're in the right spot.
Yes.
Welcome back.
Welcome back.
You're in the right spot now. Today we'll be covering episodes 3 and 4 of Fallout, the first season on Amazon Prime. And man, if you missed the first episode, again, go fucking watch the other one. You're at the wrong one. But it's such a great season. It's such a great show, and episodes 3 and 4 just keep dialing that notch up.
Yeah. Where do we want to jump in with this one?
How episode 2 ends with Lucy chopping off the head of our poor friend Wiltzig, who just couldn't make the full journey. Jim's limb was not enough. Oh man, it's the veteran's choice, and yet I don't know why.
I loved how it showed like the absolute leakage of blood as he was hobbling his way through the wasteland. But I mean,
and she really thought they were going to make it, but he knew better, and so he gave her. And I think that weapon is called the shish kebab in the game. The mechanical sword, something like that, or maybe that's the fire one. Either way,
it looks like what you use to trim like bushes,
Yeah. I think it's a repurposed hedge trimmer. There is, someone will correct. That's fine. It's a variant of that, but it's very funny to see the way they translate the weapons in the game to the screen, and that one was a good one. But yeah, episode 3 that we could pick up, and obviously Maximus it was the draw, I'd say, between him and the ghoul in episode 2, and they're both Maximus gets sent off by having that one piece of the wire cut, and he lands near the latrines. I think that's where we pick up with him. Yeah. And she thinks he's so heroic when he's flying over top.
He's like a shooting star.
And then he just lands in a pile of piss, unfortunately. So, but he's used to that because he used to work the tire porta potties at the base, so he's used to that.
Yeah, the fly pits.
Yeah, so there's a lot of different angles that we can start from. We can start with him in Junktown still. We can pick up with some of the flashback stuff, and then of course there's Lucy. So where would you like to start?
Let's go with the flashback stuff.
It's a good choice.
I can't help but be really into it. I think look, every time Cooper goes back, and now in this episode, it's more about his involvement with Vault-Tec, which is adding more layers to his story. And it's oh, okay. So in this pre-apocalypse setting, he did the cowboy actor thing, but now he's the spokesperson, and we're learning more about him.
It's almost like an origin story for the Vault Boy, because he's doing the thumbs up and everything. Yeah. It's awesome. I mean, it's great.
I really enjoyed that. And I like too seeing a little bit more about, I guess, his personality. He's not this really upbeat guy. He does have his kind of quirky humor about him, but he's still pretty serious,
Mm-hmm.
And I love how that translates through to the ghoul, because now on top of that, he's very serious, but he's also a realist. And I think
Mm-hmm.
that's what kind of sucks me in with his character, where I love Lucy. I love this doe-eyed, kind of walking through life not knowing what's happening. But Cooper is like, he's just like this, he's like the guide, I guess,
Mm-hmm.
through this landscape. And I think for people who haven't, played the games or something like that, it's almost kind of like he's the mentor type figure, showing you like, open your eyes, this is what's going on out here, deal with it.
Yeah, and it's such a stark. I love the contrast they do because they open with him filming a scene and he's like, I don't want to have to kill this guy. This isn't what my character usually does. He's the good guy. He arrests bad guys. He doesn't just shoot him in the head. And you know, the ghoul wouldn't think twice. He'd be like, all right, you're dead. You're guy. I'm sent here to capture you. Boom, in the head. But
Yeah.
we see like that transformation. He's still like he has a moral code back then that he has abandoned. We see that he's abandoned that code entirely, which he had to do to survive from his perspective. So it's a great. It's so hard because he does feel like the villain of the series. Like he feels very antagonistic, but you want to root for him. You want to root for him so hard because you see what he
Yeah.
used to be.
And too, like there's this overhead question of like what happened to his family.
Mm-hmm.
At the beginning of the season, he has a young daughter. And so we haven't had that reveal yet. What happened to them? Why, like, how far did they make it into the apocalypse? And all of these flashbacks, one, give you more to understand about his character, but also give you more question marks. And I think it's probably the Cooper flashbacks and the vault stuff, like that just really had like my gears going. And I think those are probably like, I don't know, just like really fun bits to chomp at. But there's also too like with Maximus, like uh, he lands, like just crash lands, and we have these people looking at him like, oh, like that power armor looks pretty cool. And so he's immediately given another thing to overcome. So, despite him getting the power armor, letting Knight Titus die, killing the bear, like he's gone through it. And now he's just like left to the humans, which I think in so many apocalyptic stories those are the villains, like it's
Yep.
not the mutated monsters and creatures, it's the people.
Yeah, you think, yeah, you're almost like, oh, there's no way, like he's on the top now. He's top of the food chain. He really only has to worry about the worst of the things. But no, he's still soft and fleshy. These are people that they don't get to quick save and reload when they make a mistake. These are they have to face the consequences. And he's not he shows a bit of his naivety. Like he's like, oh, I'm just gonna leave my power armor here. I'll chain it up, but no one's gonna touch it. No one's gonna touch my
It'll
stuff.
be fine.
It'll be fine. And then there was actually, I loved this moment because there's so many of these little tiny moments where it's almost like you do a double take, because in the game when you repair something, you use a repair tool, it's done instantly. You drink a bottle of water, you drink the entire thing in one go, like the farmer did. He's like, someone gives you a bottle of water, you drink the whole thing. So when he brings the piece that the ghoul broke to the repair shop, after pulling a couple teeth, it says, can you fix it quickly? Zap. All right, here you go. It's fixed. It's very
Yeah.
much like it's a game thing translated to screen, and you're like, what?
It almost
It's
breaks
that
the
fast?
fourth. Yeah, it almost breaks the fourth wall, though. It's like very much a wink and a nod to the
Yeah, it's
game
very meta.
fans.
It's a very
Yeah.
meta move, and I love those little meta moments because they stand out in a way, because you're like, why was that, like, so why did you just drink the entire bottle of water in one go? Well, why did they repair it that fast? Those are things you don't question when you're playing a game, because it's like, of
Right.
course, the water bottle is a consumable. You got to drink the whole thing at once. You can't drink
Yeah.
half a bottle of water. Um, you use a repair kit, it's instantly fixed no matter what it is. And yeah, I love that moment. So he gets it fixed, and then he has to fight with some little guys.
Okay, I have a question for you, very surface level. But so far in the show, in these first 3 episodes, what was your favorite, like, mutant weird creature? We had the rad roaches, right?
Yeah, we
We
had them around the
had
campfire. Yep.
we had the bear. That was a bear, right? Not a rat.
Yep. Yeah. Yep. That's a bear.
Okay.
That was a giant bear. They have like a name. It's like they have like a wasteland name. It's like Yao Guai or something like that. It's a
Okay.
radiated bear. Yeah. For the pedants out there, there you go. But it's
There
just
you
a giant irradiated bear. Yeah.
And
But
then we have the gulper in
oh
this
god.
episode. So what's your favorite so
It
far?
does have to be the gulper. So that we've seen some. The only time we've seen gulpers in the games is in the Far Harbor DLC for Fallout 4. That's when they were first introduced as like salamander mutants. And then we get,
Mhm.
one of the best things about Fallout is you get regional variants of different monsters, like based on the animals that would have been there. They kind of make different versions of them that bear more or less the same thing, or at least are classified similarly. So the gulper we get to see is like an axolotl kind of variant, and
Yeah,
we get to see how it's made eventually, but it's got like fingers inside
I
the
loved it.
throat, has human hands and arms, and it's so
It's
creepy.
it's
Ugh.
so good. Like I said, this is very surface level, but
Yeah.
I'm very, very, very much into the weird creatures of, like fantasy and science fiction. And like when you get the like camera angle down the throat of this creature, I'm like, yes, yes.
And then there's like the tame ones. I was unsure how much two-headed animals they were gonna do, because that's CG budget. CG budget is very
Mhm,
expensive. You have to pick and choose where you use your VFX money. But when they had the two-headed cows, which are called like Brahmin, like that was a
mhm.
great thing to see. I didn't need to see a two-headed fawn. That was fine. I was fine with a baby fawn just being a regular baby deer. Chickens can be fine. I don't even know if you ever see chickens in the games, but it doesn't even matter because I love the way they're used. So, but when they do get to use the mutated animals, man, they really nailed it. They really knocked it out of the park with the mutants.
It was good. I loved how, for one, like it's just fun, right? Like it's fun
Hmm.
to see, but I love that they brought it in as, something to push the plot along
Hmm.
so that we get this next convergent moment between Lucy and the ghoul. And now it's like she's lost the head, right? But then he shows up and now they're kind of like working together-ish in a way. I
A
mean,
little bit.
he's forcing her to be bait, but like it's nice for them to to spend some screen time together and kind of like see how their personalities are going to start brushing up against one another. But yeah, like I thought in a weird, very weird way, it was kind of like I wholesome is the wrong word because he's like hanging her to her death, but like on the one hand, I have this like weird sympathy for the ghoul, like, and this is even saying, before I finished the entire season, like just
Hmm.
getting his backstory in the first 3 episodes, I felt like a way about him where I couldn't quite hate him.
Yeah, yeah. I don't think there was ever a point where I was like, man, this guy is despicable. I do not want to see any more of him. I'm just like, please give me more of the ghoul. I love him. I love everything he says, everything he does. Please don't let
Yeah.
him die in season one.
Right?
They would. They couldn't. They couldn't.
They couldn't.
No.
And so, okay, is this also the episode where I've forgotten his name?
Oh yeah. So this is
The
Thaddeus.
Okay, Thaddeus, yes.
Yes. So we get it's a great. I did not see this coming, and I thought the show did a lot of times, like when I watch shows, and I can't help it, but like my brain sees like a setup for something, and I try to guess where they're gonna go with it. And there's always the obvious. Thaddeus can show up and he can just die in the same episode. There's no need to have him, narratively speaking. They can make an easy decision to say he comes in, Maximus gets his revenge. We see that as part of his turn, but we instead get to see him humanized as well and sympathize with him a little bit, which is really strange.
It
I did not
was
see that coming.
it it was almost heartbreaking too because it can't last. Like
Yeah.
Maximus can't stay in that power armor forever. At some point he's going to have to show his face. So like every time like something would happen that brought them closer together, it was like that like queasy aftertaste of like, uh-oh, that's gonna be
Yeah, because
short-lived.
and he, he's surprised. That he's surprised too, because he has, been indoctrinated as hard as you can get. He expects to be, cannon fodder. He knows his role. Maximus didn't accept being cannon fodder. He was like, I'm a main character. I'm not going to do that kind of stuff. But Thaddeus is like, he accepts. He's like, all right, if I've done something wrong, you can kill me right now. And he's like completely shocked that Maximus sends him back to the shore and also saves him. Like he's like, he couldn't. It says so much about their organization that the expectation is to not give a shit about the squires and just go through them as much as you can, because there's no shortage of recruits.
Yeah.
Why bother? But instead, we get to see Maximus step up and be what he thinks the knights should be and what they should represent, and try to act very chivalrous and kind of act very like the hero. And man, I loved to see the moment when Thaddeus gets sucked into the gulper. I was like, all right, this is it. This is the moment I thought was going to happen. He's going to get eaten, and that's exactly how the story is going to play out for him. And then instead, he gets saved, and there's a beautiful moment of like just coincidence, quote unquote, where the other main characters have gotten onto a side quest. They say as much in a very meta way, and then the other heroes pop along, and oh my god, the thing we've been searching for all along was inside this monster's belly. How is that possible? And then just like, hell yeah, let's just go with it. You don't question that kind of stuff. Why would you?
Yeah. I love too how like the way that they've set this up, now each person has a travel partner, which is nice. Like they have someone to act with and interact with.
Mm-hmm.
But I love how like, they're feeling pretty great about this. They've got the head, but Lucy has like stuck the tracker up the nose of
Yeah.
Wilsig. And so like she and the ghoul are kind of like, like tottering along after them. And it's a very interesting combination of characters. But I really enjoyed Thaddeus. I thought he's got, I don't know, good fun energy. Good
Yeah, and
dude.
it's so typical of like, you see the bully character and you're like, it's not uncommon for current bullies to have former been bullied. So it's like, it's very, they humanize him immediately because he was the Maximus before he showed up, and he just happened to be able to be like, you can be the new punching bag. And then he feels guilty about that. I have to assume that bullies feel retrospective guilt over it, but when you're the person who was bullied, you would be like, who cares what they feel like? They were
Right.
miserable to me. So Maximus kind of has to wrestle with that, which is it's an interesting path for him to kind of reconcile with that.
Yeah, yeah. I thought that whole storyline was a lot of fun. I think too. I mean, this episode we go back to Vault 33 some more,
Yes, for the
spend
first
more
time.
yeah, spend more time with our good buddy Norm. So this is good stuff.
Norm is such a vibe, because he's like, how do you punish somebody who has equally hated every job he's ever had? And man, that is just that's such a good vibe to have. Like, lacks enthusiasm in every single job. But then you have poor Chet just crying his eyes out over losing his gatekeeper job. It's just the stark contrast between those two is just such a beautiful dynamic. I love those two.
Yeah, I guess everybody gets someone to like work with in this episode. A lot of like fun pairings of characters. I love that Norm is put in charge of the prisoners and he's like, well, we could do this. And they're like, whoa, buddy, like it's a little dark. But
And he's
yeah,
like, yeah, well, why wouldn't we?
yeah.
And then Steph, oh man, Stephanie is such an interesting character. I almost don't recognize her when I go back and watch episode 1 without the eye patch. I'm like, who's that? Who is this
Yeah.
person without an eye patch? Because the eye patch is just like so, it's just a part of her by that point. It's just so good.
I feel like it's almost like a hint,
Hmm.
like a lot of the times a lot of the times for a character, like if you disfigure them in some way and make them kind of look a little bit monstrous, then it's like, oh, like, is there something more with her? And you get to see some moments between her where it's like something feels a little bit off. Like she's kind
Hmm.
of like playing Chet a little bit, where you're like, okay, is she just like she needs like a backup husband now? Is there something else happening? I mean, she at one point drops off like a box of her dead husband's things, and then like I don't know, it felt like we were supposed to catch something in there with her, with Steph.
I think so, especially because if you go back and watch episode 1, you know, when Monty walks through and she's like lucky because Bert is kind of behind her and he's, you know, he's an average looking guy. He might
Yeah.
not be like the most looker, but you know, he's not a bad looking guy. But then you have this, you know, tall, dark, and handsome guy walk through and she's like, that could have been me. And
Mhm.
so like we don't really see that kind of jealousy or that kind of weird obvious fakeness, because for all the other vault dwellers it feels very genuine, like their naivety doesn't feel forced, like that's how they actually see the world. But with
Yeah.
her, you see hints of like she doesn't really actually feel that way, but she's wearing a mask and it's very much apparent with her. And I think that was the first hint, and then yeah, I think this was another point where it's like she's obviously pissed and she wants blood revenge, and that's very not like the vault residents outside of Norm is
Yeah.
again a wild card, but
Team Norm.
honestly he's the best. He's one of the best characters. So well written. But yeah, I loved his growing suspicion. This was like the first he got, you know, approached after being a bit of a wild card at the meeting, and then I think that was next episode that they show him kind of digging in deeper. So yeah, then, but yeah, he's feeding the prisoners, and very much is like, I can't believe I'm feeding these guys Jello cake when they've, you know, murdered half of our population. But love that guy.
Was there any I know you had talked about doing some timeline stuff. Does this feel like a good place to sandwich it in at?
Actually, the start of episode 4 does, because there was a moment
Okay.
I spent like so much time yesterday looking for one specific scene, because I was like, I knew there was a year mentioned with when Lucy thought her mom died, but I couldn't find it in any of the scenes I thought it was going to be in. And it's actually at the start of episode 4 when they meet the other ghoul,
Mhm.
Roger, and right when, you know, she's talking about her own hardships that their vault has faced compared to, you know, themselves, you know, the surface, you know, it's not all perfect up there, and she says that there was a plague of 77, and that was the date that I wanted, that date, because 2277 is a date that we see later on when she's you know, in a classroom in a different vault,
Mhm.
and that has definitely caused a little bit of turmoil amongst
Yeah.
the hardcore lore hounds or whatever you want to call them. But that was that's an
The lure
important
hounds.
the lore hounds, yeah. So there was Hank was first elected in 2271, and the Great Plague of that happened in Vault 33 was 2277. So
Okay.
it's unclear whether that means she died in that year or if she died as a result of that stuff. So, but it was mentioned that she was quarantined. A lot of people were quarantined, and a lot of people died. The dad dropped specifically 128 pounds, is what she said. Just remembering that specific detail. So it's important to kind of establish the timeline of Hank being traded to Vault 33 from 31, and then presumably 3 years prior, and then elected as the overseer 3 years later. And the election is actually something we start to see in this episode, because we start to see them hanging signs up to replace
Yeah.
him. And this is kind of where I started questioning, like, how often do they hold elections? Are they only holding an election now because he's gone, or would this have been happening anyway? So
Right. Was it an election year
yeah,
regardless?
and it might have been. They might do 2 year cycles like Senate and like House elections, because they're probably modeled somewhat after the U.S. government. Of course, why
Right.
wouldn't they be? So if it's a 4 year cycle, it's technically midway through his most recent run. But if it's a 2-year cycle, it would have been an election year anyway. So that's kind of that is somewhere I landed with that. So that'll be. There's more bits that I have on this big
Yeah,
old sheet of
yeah.
paper. I've got a big old sheet, and I'm building a literal timeline on the
Let's
other
go,
side.
Pepe Sylvia. Let's go.
Yeah. Oh, and that's not even. I even have even more stuff. There, I have stuff on here tracing the dates and the names on the dress from episode 1 as well. Like that's the
Okay,
details they
okay. Yeah,
have
yeah,
on this.
yeah.
Like because they show that Stephanie, who we were obviously talking about, married to Bert on March 17th, 2294, which means that's probably the date that she was transferred from, that she could have been transferred from 31 to 33, or she came to 33 prior because Bert actually comes from 32. So
Okay.
Bert was one of the exchanges for her marriage. So either he came from 32 and then came to 33 before that point, or that was the year that she came from 31 to 33 to marry him. So it's just there's a lot of dates, and they give you hard dates sometimes. So it's very interesting to try to be able to piece together the puzzle pieces that they give with the dates that they are giving you, because some of them are hard coded dates. Like these are exactly when these happened. So you may as well just use it. So yeah, there's I don't think Lucy's mom wore that dress, but there is a potential one. Like there's 4 names that you can kind of read for sure. There's Stephanie's, there's Wendy Clark, there's
Okay.
Sharon K. Smith before that, and then there's another name that's right after that that starts with an R. So it could be a name that is shortened to Rose. It's like
Okay.
the initials are RLB. So I wrote that down just to be sure. And the potential year is like most of the ones before that are like very easy to read, but that one is like January 6th, 22 something. So it could be
Okay.
2266, it could be 2268, 69. And if it happens to be 68, that's like a little bit before when Hank was transferred over to 33. But if it's like 69, that's like a few months after. So it's very fun to kind of see if you can piece together hints like that. So maybe she wore the dress, maybe she didn't, but that's on my timeline. I'll figure it out somehow.
Yeah, I mean, I think okay, the first vault mystery like for the viewers is essentially how did the raiders get in? Like
Yes.
that's like I guess like the first mystery. But then like as it goes further, then we have the mystery of the McLean mother. And like also, I guess if we go further, there's more mysteries, but I'm trying not to like skip too far ahead. But it does seem like all of these things are going to be somewhat related. And I think that's like the genius thing about it, where they've presented multiple mysteries within just this one vault plot.
Mm-hmm.
So like there's potential for like so many findings of things in there. And I mean like again like the elections, like that also is a mystery because you have certain things taking place that would lead you to believe that like certain events happening from within, like the combined vault convergence, the multiple vaults that connect. So like there's so much stuff going on here, and I love that not only do you get like some fun characters, like it's never boring anytime you go
Mm-hmm.
back. You got like Steph, Chet, Norm, and then like your random kind of like background vaulties, I guess. But there's also like this whole I don't know, like it's almost like a weird little like CSI drama, like kind of like tucked away in the
Mm-hmm.
story, and it's really cool.
Yeah, it gives you that kind of like rush feeling when you're like, when you kind of stumble on something, you're like, oh, this could be a theory. And then you find supporting evidence and you're like, oh my gosh, am I actually onto something here? So like
Yeah.
the we're presented with it as, all right, obviously that the Raiders, they must have killed everyone in Vault 32 at some point, but then we actually get there and they died 2 years before they were ever even,
Yeah,
in interacted with. So
they're
there's,
skeletons.
yeah, and they were, we have Chet, bless his heart, just kind of like tagging along with Norm through the rubble, but Norm's not afraid. He just has to know the answer. He has to
Yeah,
figure out. So he's clicking through their Pip Boys. He's going through the information on the computers and finding that it was his mom's Pip Boy that opened the door from the outside. So these people didn't let them in. They were already dead. But somehow they had
her
the Pip Boy,
yeah,
her Pip
like
Boy, yeah.
that. Okay, like do we want to make theories about that? Like, are you okay with that? If is it too or is it too spoilery? You're good. Because this was
I
one of
think
my questions for you.
I think it's fair. I think what we can do is we can say like, what were your theories in the moment when you were watching it?
Hmm.
Like, and we can give what the real answer is later on. For the real answers, we do know. But what was kind of going through your head at this point when they revealed it was hers?
Well, when it was revealed that it was hers, I just initially assumed that they like their father had been lying to them and she was like cast out or something. Like I wasn't sure if this was like a vengeance type plot line where she was like, I'm gonna get back in, or perhaps like Norm took the kids away and she was like, I'm gonna, get my kids back one way or another. And if it means like disrupting the entire ecosystem down there, I don't care. Um, or also just that someone stole their dead mother's Pip Boy and used it or gave it to someone to use.
Hmm.
Like there were multiple, multiple things.
Those are all like, I think, very logical, like possible answers. Was it grave robbers? Was it
Hmm.
well, is there more to the Hank Rose relationship that we know about? Is there more to the vaults that we know about? And that's exactly what you should be thinking, is there's always something more to the vaults. And there's this great little scene in one of the rooms where like a person has like killed himself with a toaster oven. A few of them actually used a toaster, ironically enough. But he's watching this experiment play out on the TV with these rats, and
Hmm.
it's talking about like they built this perfect rat utopia. They want for nothing, and in the end, instead of actually being overpopulated to collapse, they end up just eating each other and turning against each other and becoming more
Yes.
isolated. So, and that's like probably a real life experiment that has gone on, somewhat unethical, probably before ethical standards were in place, or this universe might have different ethics with regards to animal testing. But
Right.
I thought that was basically, at that point in the show, I thought they were saying that Vault 32 was that experiment. I thought that they were saying
Hmm.
this is what the experiment was, and I think that in hindsight they were saying that's what happened. It's not necessarily the experiment, but these people eventually turned on each other and then just ate each other alive and murdered each other. So the reason why wasn't clear. So that's why I was like, oh, maybe that was the purpose all along, was an overpopulation experiment. One vault is always kept at the right population. One is routinely like never given like that kind of reprieve by like giving people away, or having these events like the plague or the weevil infestation. Like I was
Hmm.
like, maybe Vault 33 has planned catastrophes to keep the population in check, but 32 didn't, and maybe 31 is like the perfect like control version, like you said. Those were my thoughts after this episode. I was like, that 32 obviously was like the guinea pig version. So
30, what would be interesting is if you're really focusing on like a meritocracy, you would need to prioritize like getting the work done. And if you didn't have enough members of your vault, obviously you'd have to look for, husbands and wives for people, but also like you'd really want to amp up this feeling of like working hard and like getting the
mhm,
job done because there's not enough people to do all of the work. But also like they have abundance. So like maybe
mhm.
they are the vault with the lower population because like it doesn't seem like they're starving or anything. Their harvest looks great. Like they've got plenty of jello.
Yeah, yeah, and that was where I was like, that was where I was at this point. And I think by the end, I may have landed somewhere different, but at this time I was like, Vault 33 doesn't really have like it's kept at just the right level. It's not over abundant, it's not under abundance,
Mm-hmm.
it's just right. And maybe when things are getting too close, I was like, oh, maybe the raid by the Raiders was supposed to happen because their
Population
number.
control. Yeah.
That was exactly where I was at that point. I was like, oh, it's all part of the plan. Whether the dad being taken was part of it, I was unsure, but I was like, oh yeah, they probably planned that raid to just thin the numbers out because they were just getting too overpopulated. But yeah, it's just these are the show is just giving you this avenues to just kind of theory craft in your head as you're watching it, as Norm is uncovering things, and getting closer and closer to the truth than he realizes, which is again so true to the games. He's the perfect vehicle for you for that moment when you're like, you discover a new vault and you're like in sneak mode the whole time because you're afraid that there's going to be monsters, but there's nothing because everything in it is dead. But you're
Mm-hmm.
so scared to go around every corner and you see this like destruction and devastation all around you, and you almost have to be like numb to it because you're like,
Mm-hmm.
"Oh, I just want to read the terminals, I want to get the loot, I want to get all the stuff that I want." So like he's just like kind of walking past it all, he's like taking it all in but just like numb to it. And then Chet's just like,
Bro, I gotta get out of here. Yeah. I think I think episode 4 for me was the most creepy, I want to say. And it's not just the vault stuff, but I don't know why the whole super duper mart, is that what it's called? Super
yep,
duper
Super Duper
mart.
Mart, yep.
Okay.
Yep.
I don't know why that just like, oh, like I'm sorry, but that whole plot line like just made me feel sick. And I think it was possibly because she's sent in like not on her own accord, like she has no agency in this, and
Mm-hmm.
he's cut off her finger, which like
Oh my
yikes.
god, a finger for a finger, yeah.
Yeah, yikes. And like I said, like he is like very villainous, but also like it's a weird like lesson almost, like
Yep.
this is what it's like out here, get used to it. So she has no agency. She's sent inside this place to retrieve the things that he needs. And like what she encounters in there, like
It's insane.
it's, I mean, like the two guys, like just kind of like sitting on the couch, very humorous, very
They're
fun.
zonked out just watching cartoons.
Yeah. But it was just, I don't know, that whole like, I'm gonna fix your finger, but like after I fix your finger, I'm gonna take your organs. Like,
Yeah, and a surprise voice cameo from Matt Berry. I did
yes,
not expect Matt
yes.
Berry in this show before I saw the trailer, and everything I dreamed about, like when I saw that trailer, I was like, "Oh, Matt Berry is the voice for the
Snip, snip.
Codsworth." Yeah, for Mr. Snip Snip. I was like, "Oh, great!" I was like, "Please let him voice every single automaton Codsworth for me." And I'm pretty sure that's where they're gonna go with it. And I was like, "Yes, thank you so much, thank you. Please keep that."
When he first started talking, I was like, who like I know that voice. Like
Yeah,
I know that voice. Who is it? And I think too, maybe that's what led it to feel more like Uncanny Valley, where it was just like, this is just bizarre and wonderful and weird.
it's such a Matt Berry line too to be like, "You look like a woman." Like that's such a I can imagine any of his characters that he's ever played just saying the lines he was saying, and it'd be the perfect transition. So,
I
um,
love I love how instead of cursing, like instead of an expletive, Lucy goes fudge, and he's like, "We don't have fudge here." And
there's no
then
fudge
later,
here. Yeah,
yeah, and then later when she electrocutes him, he's like spiraling through like just random like phrases that he says, and he's like, "We have no fudge here," and like he brought it back. I don't know, like it was so humorous, but it was so like weird.
and those are like that again. Those are the moments of like every super duper Mario in the games almost always is infested with ghouls. So that was like spot on with that. And
Yeah,
then to have like a criminal enterprise, a drug trade in there, based on human trafficking effectively. And organ trafficking, I guess, if you want to go even that further. But
yeah,
yeah, the fact that like, and there is a moment, I'm trying to remember if it specifically is this episode. I think it is when she leaves the Super Duper Mart. There's music that plays when you like leave the vault for the first time. It's very like triumphant. It's very like big, and you'd know it if you heard it. And it didn't play when she left the vault, but it played when she left. So I think that this is the moment that she left her world for
It's like
real.
yeah.
Like that was the moment she still decided she's following her golden rule. She gives him the drugs he needs, but from that point on, she is not Lucy the Vault Dweller. She's Lucy the Wastelander, I think.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I mean, I think too, like it's a good idea to kind of let her sit with that for the amount of time that they did, and like she's still, like you said, like she's still golden rule Lucy, like she's not totally switched to the other side like the ghoul, but she's definitely in this moment, I think, had her eyelids peeled wide open. And it's taken so much, right? Like monsters, watching like fights and, getting scammed and this and that and the other. But it finally took, snip, snip to be like, I'm not here to assault you. Or what did she said? I think she said like, talking about like assault, like sexual assault or something. I thought you were
Oh
going
yeah,
to
she
like
thought he was
tell
here to be
me,
a sex slave, and he's like, "Oh my
yeah,
god, that's disgusting."
I'm
No.
here to harvest your organs. And it's like, not any better.
Yeah,
Like,
that's not the trade-off you think it is. Yeah.
but the way that
Yes.
the way that they bring that up, it's like he's like absolutely like no, and you're like, oh, thank God. And then like the next line out of his mouth is that, and you're like, oh God.
Yeah.
Okay, here we go.
Yeah, I think Martha did it to her as well. Like that was the first time we see her shoot a regular gun. Like it's always been the tranquilizer gun, and it's shoot to stun, not shoot to kill. And she's like desperate to try to see if Martha has the humanity left in her, and like, oh, maybe I'm the one that can talk to her. It's very protagonist energy. And then she's like, I can keep using my speech checks, if you will, my trying to pass the speech check to do this peacefully, but there are conflicts in the wasteland that just can't end with a conversation. And yeah, her having to pick up the gun and shoot Martha, I think that was just like, she's like, I can't survive the way I've been surviving anymore. The lesson finally sinks in. Uh,
Yeah. Okay, so this was another question that I had written down for you, but what was the point of keeping the ghouls like in the freezers? Like,
So yeah, I think that those are probably ghouls that were sold to them by other ghouls for like parts or for
okay.
future food. There were
Mhm.
signs on the glass that I didn't get a chance to pause and read. I'm sure I'll go back and do that at some point. But I think that there are probably prices for like body parts. I'm sure if you're a ghoul and you walk in there and you're like, I need an arm, they'll be like, all right, pick one. So
Okay.
that, and then I think that if they're in there for so long, they without the drug, and obviously why would they get the drug, because they're slaves at that point.
Right.
They eventually turned feral. So the ones that were still
Kind of
of
fresh.
sound mind, yeah, of
Yeah.
sound mind and body, they were relatively fresh. However long it takes for them to turn is dependent on the plot, what the plot needs. But it was an interesting moment because all of those ones were they were just like the ghoul, in the sense that they're people. And that's
Mhm.
a lot of people don't see ghouls as people, they just see them as the monsters. And there are some of them that are just regular people that are just really damaged. And the Brotherhood is infamous, actually. They're ghouls, for them, are shoot on sight. They don't wait to see if they're a person first.
That why does
um
that doesn't I mean, it's not a surprising way that like they would go about dealing with that though. I mean, like just so
yeah,
like
like,
not even gonna question it.
and it's like, if you try to like put yourself into the Brotherhood mentality, you can understand how they reach that point, because in their mind they view them as abominations. They're not people anymore. And it's it's not to say it's right, but you can understand why they were pushed to believe that, because maybe they've only ever encountered the feral ones, or that's just, they've only read about them in textbooks, and they're like, these are people that aren't people anymore, and they will eat your face off in a heartbeat, without any
Yeah.
hesitation. So, and then there's all the other monsters, like the bears and the gulpers and all that stuff. Like, it's like, yeah, okay, there's shoot to kill kind of on basis of being a radiation monster is okay in some cases, but they're very much, these are the rules. There's no gray area for them. And yeah, they're very much, a lot of societies in Fallout are ghoul racist. If that's weird to say, they're ghoulist. It's like, it's so
Coolest.
strange. Yeah, it's so strange because like, yeah, some of the zombies are still people, but not all of them. So it's like, it does create a moral conundrum in the universe that you constantly have to battle with when you're playing the games too. Is like, these are, they're talking to you like people, they're acting towards you like people, but then when you're wandering around, you have random ones that attack you. So it's like trying to learn the difference and how to handle the nuance of that is very much in spirit with the game. I think even the mama, the convenience store person was like, well, your kind isn't welcome here. Ghouls are not welcome in a lot of cities,
Yeah.
for that reason. So they're very much a persecuted, like they're treated subhuman, even if a lot of them still have humanity, which is, why you can sympathize with them to an extent, is,
I mean,
they're just trying to survive.
it's a good way to like summarize it though, and I mean that so strongly speaks to how I feel about Cooper slash the ghoul, but they really presented it in a way where I don't think it would be weird to feel sympathy for him. But
Mm-hmm.
I think too, like with this series, I was maybe a little bit surprised at like the moral layers of things, and not like in the way where it's like, oh, like some people are gray, some people are, like good, but also like just in terms of like political, um there's like this whole like socialism narrative, and then
Mm-hmm.
like the like corporate narrative, and then like the governmental narrative, and then you've got like the brotherhood, who are kind of like, they're like a weird religious sect really, and then you've got
Yep.
like the vault dwellers, who are like, that's kind of like a weird little cult in itself, and then you've got too, on top of this, you've got like the raiders and the ghouls, and it's really all over the place. And one of the things that I was really, I mean, like I was like shockingly surprised that people were like weirded out about that, because I have a very like small knowledge of the game, but that was
Mm-hmm.
like something that felt so completely obvious. And then like going back to the show, it seemed like some people were like really put off about that, which was like, I mean, like, honestly, like, to be frank, like, mind-boggling. Like, okay,
Yeah,
all
the
right.
games are very anti-capitalist in their messages, and they don't be shy about it. They've never been shy about it. And like,
Yeah,
Vault-Tec is like, again, they give you these like perfect idealized like visions of them, like Brotherhood of Steel. They think they're good guys. Vault-Tec, they're trying to be good guys, and then you peel back the layers, and they all have their gross undertones of controlling people and capitalism and consumerism and motivations by money and personal kind of desires and ambitions. So yeah, it is very much in line with how the games have always been, on like a personal level, like having the moral decisions to make and impacting the story, but also just like the undertones of the stories as a whole. Like, the more you find out about Vault-Tec, the more you realize they're just as bad as everybody else. Like,
yeah,
the individuals might be okay, but the organizations and the factions are really gross and disgusting, kind of, in a way.
yeah, like, so this is, like, kind of, like, end of the season, like, idea, but I have a feeling, like, if we get a season 2, like, what was presented about Moldaver at the beginning, she was a villain, right? Like, she comes
Yes.
in, she's a villain, and then, like, as you go on, things change, you learn more about her, and you're like, "Oh, okay, like, she has her own ideas, morals, and just the way that she's, like, trying to do things, some of it seems pretty good." But I'm also not convinced that if we learn more of her story, that there won't be a background to it that is very dark and very, like, almost incriminating in a way.
Hmm.
So like I'm expecting the rug to be like pulled out from underneath me no matter what, in terms of like how her character is like presented, if we get more of a backstory on her, because they seem to have been doing it with like most of the characters, whether it's like they're presented one way and then later you find out it's something different.
Yeah, there's layers to pretty much every character, and it's really fun and really rewarding in that sense too. Because yeah, I think that a lot of the games are the same way too. You're presented with, this is the antagonist, deal with them, and then you play the game for a while. And I think they even say like, Wiltzig says to her, like, by the time you get there, are you going to want the same things when you started out? The games are no different. You start out with a mission in mind. By the time you get there, you might not want to make the choice that you're like, this is so easy, they're the bad guy, I'm going to go in there, end them, and then make my decision, and it's the easiest game ever. But no, that you're faced with moral quandaries all along the way, and you're like, these people are, presenting their stuff as facts and helping me form my opinion, but then you're confronted with it and you're like, why is it's not easy? It's not easy.
Yeah.
It's not easy decisions to make. So it's very much, I think that's the one of the parts of the tone that they've captured expertly, is that it's never easy.
And I think that, I mean, that's also like how I felt about the people like upset that like there were so many layers and statements being made about, like groups, where I'm like, I feel like that's the game. But
Yeah. It all depends on what faction you align yourself with. You can do a Brotherhood of Steel playthrough where you align with their faction and everything they say makes sense. You can do a different faction and you're like, oh no, they're actually antagonists, they're villains, I need to make sure they're taken care of. And it's all about how you play the game. And all these, I think that is the beauty of this show, is we're getting to play all of those different playthroughs at the same time. We get to see them play out in real time. Like, you can play like Lucy, you can play like the Ghoul, you can play like Norm, or you can play like Maximus. Like, those are all very viable ways to play the game, and you can still get to the end and complete the game. And but the journey is completely different every time. So I love that.
Yeah. Should we wrap it up there?
I think we should. Any other things that we missed out on, or points that you want to make?
Probably 100.
Yeah, we'll get there.
Yeah, we'll keep doing this. So we'll do 2 episodes at a time, and then who knows, maybe like we can do like a wrap up afterwards or something like that. But if we have a lot of unaddressed topics, maybe. But
maybe I'll have my timeline done by then, because right now I've only got I've got 4 dates on them right now, and I want to figure out the rest. So
yeah.
Let's end it here. Thanks everybody for watching. Okay. And again, if you got to this point and you didn't watch episode 1, go to Amber's channel. What are you doing? But if you did, thanks for watching.
Yeah.
And check out her channel for the next one.
Yeah, and like and subscribe to Kevin's channel.
Yeah, I don't do stuff on it. Maybe I'll start doing stuff on it.
Maybe you will. Maybe this is the Kev era.
This is the start of a brand new era.